Boldwood presents Long Story Short, written by Victoria Walters and read by Jerry Allen. Chapter 1. And I knew when we kissed I had found the love of my life, and it wasn't a happy ending after all. It was just the beginning for us. I closed the book with a contented sigh as the tube train pulled into my station. I hastily stuffed When I Met You by Jake Richards into my bag, jumped up and alighted, following the throng of my fellow commuters onto the long escalator, tapping my card at the barrier at the top, and walking out into the fresh air. I left Oxford Circus Station and passed by the shops that were a dangerous temptation every day, and headed down a side street towards my place of work. It was a bright June morning, and the sign of sunshine, coupled with the warm, fuzzy feeling I always got at the end of reading a romance novel, left me beaming as I walked to the office. My smile broadened further when my phone buzzed in my bag, and I saw that it was my cousin Liv calling me. "Morning, Liv," I greeted her as I slowed my pace to chat. I pushed back my wavy auburn hair off my face, wishing I had tied it up. "Hey, Freya, where are you?" "Walking to work. I just finished the new Jake Richards book on my way in." "Oh my God, how was it?" Liv asked eagerly. She not only was a huge romance reader like me, but we also made our living from romance books. Liv was an author, and I worked for a literary agent specialising in the genre. My chunky ankle boots clip-clopped along the cobbles on the road where the tall white building that housed the Haley Harper Literary Agency stood. It was so swoony, Liv. When the couple finally kiss and declare they love each other at the end, I had tears in my eyes. It's gorgeous. I think it might be his best book, but who knows if it will ever see the light of day. I still can't believe he said what he said," she agreed darkly. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "Kind of broke my heart a little bit," I confessed. Jake Richards wrote the most romantic stories, and he had always been one of my favourite authors. But now, I wasn't so sure. "His readers are all heartbroken. I wonder if Haley can get this book published," Liv mused. "Time will tell," I said, pushing open the door to my office building and heading towards the lifts that would take me up to the 5th floor. I had been assistant to Haley Harper for 6 months after Liv recommended me for the position. Liv was one of Haley's clients, and her romance writing career was off to a great start, although she had a long way to go to reach Jake Richards' heights. I was confident she would one day, though. I loved her writing, and was so grateful that after trying to get a job in the publishing world for a year, she helped me get this one, and I was determined to become a literary agent myself one day. I just don't understand how someone who can write a story like this one seems to hate romance. This book is so full of heart, I sighed wistfully. God, I love reading romance, but sometimes it does make me hate being single. "I'm sorry, Freya, but look, I felt the same way and then I got together with Aidan. It will happen for you too. You're too lovely not to find someone special." I smiled as I pushed the call lift button. "You're biased as your family, but thank you. I can't help but wish it would happen sooner than later. This dry spell is going on a long time." "Dry spell?" "I haven't had sex for 3 years." 3 years? But I thought you were on the dating apps." "I am, but seriously, Liv, none of the men on there appear to have even heard the word romance. They all want to start sexting or sending nudes or meeting up for Netflix and chill straight away. What happened to going on a date first, buying a girl dinner, or even giving a compliment that isn't, 'You look like someone I want to fuck'?" I continued ranting down the phone, the passion in my voice making it increase in volume as I waited for the lift. Ugh, that does sound horrible. Men should definitely read romance novels. They really should. I have to go, the lift is here, and I need to start work. "Okay, I was just checking, we're still on for drinks tonight." "Definitely. See you at the bar at 7. I hung up, stowed my phone in my bag, and when the lift doors opened, I stepped in and turned around. And froze. Because I was now face to face with a familiar figure who I hadn't realised must have been standing behind me, waiting for the lift too. Our eyes met. Then he stepped in beside me. "Morning," he said with a curt nod. I couldn't speak. My face flushed as he turned around, giving me his back and pushed the button for the 5th floor. Humiliation and horror washed over me like I'd just stepped into one of those ice baths that athletes use. I couldn't believe that not only someone could have overheard me telling Liv all about my dry spell and how men have lost the romance gene lately, but I knew this person. And it wasn't just anyone. It was Jake Richards, best-selling romance author. It was as if I'd manifested him by talking about the man with Liv on the phone. Jake Richards had made me fall in love with romance novels, but then disgraced himself by slagging off the genre. He was also our biggest client. Hayley, my boss, was his agent. Fuck. Staring at the tall, imposing man in front of me, wearing an expensive-looking grey suit, I wished I had the superpower of invisibility, but no such luck. I was very visible, and I knew I had been speaking really loudly to Liv. So now Jake Richards probably knew I hadn't had sex for 3 years. Morning, I said finally, realising I still hadn't answered him yet. I was so mortified. My voice came out high-pitched enough that it resembled a chipmunk. The lift arrived at the 5th floor then, and the doors swung open to show a glass sign declaring we'd arrived at the Hayley Harper Literary Agency. Jake strode out of the lift without a backward glance at me. I watched him go, his long legs striding confidently across the office, and I marvelled at how imposing this guy was. He was also handsome. His dark hair had a few grey streaks in it that somehow made him look even more distinguished, and he had designer stubble across his chin that must have taken him ages to style so perfectly. The heady, spicy scent of his aftershave lingered in the lift right along with me. I didn't want to get out. I half wondered if I could go back down, call in sick and hide for the rest of the day, but our receptionist Ellen saw me then and waved happily. With a resigned sigh, I stepped out of the lift and attempted to make my face look somewhat normal. Hiya. Jake Richards looked particularly scary this morning. I didn't even get a formal nod, Ellen hissed as I passed by her desk. I think Hayley has called an emergency meeting with him, so he's probably even more tense than usual, I said, thinking she was right about him seeming scary. I was nervous when I first met him, because I was such a big fan of his books. But those nerves had never gone away, because he was so cool and composed all the time. And I was, well, rarely either, if I was being completely honest. Not surprised after what happened, Ellen said, shaking her head. I know, right? I'll see you at lunch, I told her, walking on into our open plan office, looking over as Hayley stepped out of her private office to greet Jake. She gave me a quick wave before disappearing in there with him and closing her door. I headed to my desk and hoped that Jake had more things to worry about than my lack of a love life, and would forget everything he might have heard by the lifts. I wanted to be my most professional self when dealing with him, but my rant this morning had completely obliterated any success I might have had so far at doing that. Smoothing down my summer dress, I sat down at my desk and thought about Jake's latest book. I had begged Hayley to let me read it. I had genuinely loved it, but I wasn't sure if it would or should be published. 3 months ago, an article had circulated like wildfire after Jake was overheard talking about the fact he hated writing romance. He was quoted by the journalist as saying, "My readers are stupid for believing in happy ever afters, but I'm happy to take their money anyway." His fan base had rightly been furious, and his publishers were now being cagey about offering him a new contract. I knew Hayley was meeting him this morning to discuss how they could fix the fallout and get him a new book deal. But did he deserve a new deal? His words had stuck a knife into my heart, confirming what I'd said to Liv about modern men having seemingly lost the romance gene. It was like Jake Richards had destroyed all the happy ever afters he had written in one fell swoop. It had made me question whether happy ever after could ever exist in real life. If my favourite romance writer didn't actually believe in love, then maybe I needed to give up on finding it for myself. And that was an incredibly depressing thought. Hayley's office door opened then, and she leaned out and called my name. "Freya, can you come in for a sec, please?" I turned around and swallowed hard. Okay," I called back, wishing I could refuse. I really didn't think I could look Jake Richards in the eyes right now. I prayed he hadn't told Hayley about what I'd said in the office. Surely he wouldn't do that. I really didn't want to have to find out, but Hayley was waiting for me, so I stood up, took a deep breath, and walked into her office. As I closed the door behind me, I hoped that I wasn't about to be sacked from my dream job. Chapter 2. In Hayley's office, I took in my boss where she was sitting behind her desk. She looked like the tough cookie she was, with her short blonde hair, bright blue glasses that made her eyes look even more startling blue, and today she wore a sharp, dark suit. Hayley was in her 40s, and I aspired to be as successful as she was one day. Opposite her in a chair sat Jake, whose eyes turned towards the door as I walked in. I was too nervous to look back at him, and so I kept my gaze on Hayley instead. I did wonder, though, what Jake thought of my summer dress and boots combination. The two of them looked so smart and businesslike in front of me. I suddenly felt even younger than my 25 years. "Freya, I have good news," Hayley began. "I want you to go to New York." "New York?" I repeated in shock. She nodded. "Yes, next week. I realise it's short notice, but I have my sister's wedding, and I tried to tell her I couldn't come, but she used the words, 'Never speak to me again.'" Hayley rolled her eyes. I wasn't sure if she was joking or not. "So, I need you to go instead. And what did you think of Jake's new book?" Her eyes left me and fixed on Jake. "Freya read it over the weekend." "Oh." Jake turned in his chair, and I felt his eyes on me. "Is that so?" It took my brain a second to take in everything Hayley had just said. I was still stunned about her telling me I needed to go to New York, let alone asking me to tell Jake what I thought about his book. I felt under pressure from their gazes. I swallowed hard and forced myself to focus on Jake's question. Yes. I stuttered a little before finding a stronger voice. "I thought it was beautiful. I honestly had tears in my eyes at the end." "There, see?" Hayley thumped the desk and I jumped a little. "I told you it's one of your best books, Jake." I risked a peek at Jake and he was still looking at me. "I'm glad it won you two over, but we have no idea if my publishers will ever agree to bring it out," he said finally, moving his gaze from me and onto Hayley. "But you think this will work?" "I do," she replied briskly. "I pulled in all my favours to get you into the conference, and your publishers will see the romance community still they still need Jake Richards' books in their lives, so..." She turned back to me. "You'll go to New York, Freya. I remember you said you've always wanted to go. I'll need you there for 5 days." I nodded eagerly. New York was definitely a bucket list city for me. I was convinced I'd watched every film or TV show set there, and read every book that used it as a location, so it was somewhere I'd always wanted to see for myself. Excitement pumped through my blood at the thought of it, and not only would this be a trip that work would be paying for, it was for 5 whole days. I would love to go. "It's a very overrated city," Jake said, leaning back in his chair and folding his arms across his chest like he was bored with our conversation. I decided to ignore that comment and not let him dampen my good mood. "What do you need me to do there?" I asked then, thrilled Hayley's sister was getting married, so she had to send me instead of going herself. I couldn't believe she'd almost cancelled going to her sister's wedding, but then again, she was a self-confessed workaholic, so it wasn't a huge surprise. "I've managed to get Jake onto the programme of the Romance Readers Club's International Conference. It's a chance to show readers and Jake's publishers that he still loves romance, that he will always be one of the genre's biggest players, and that the article," she said, her voice bitter on the word, "was incorrect. So I need you to go with Jake and help us do just that." My mouth fell open, but no words came out. I would be going to New York with Jake? Suddenly the trip didn't seem like the dream come true it had a few moments ago. "I've told Hayley I'm unconvinced this will work," Jake said then. "Nonsense," Hayley said, waving her hand dismissively. "Of course it will work. You will charm everyone there and they will forget all about the article." I couldn't stop the snort that left my mouth. I tried to turn it into a cough, but I'm not sure I pulled it off. "Look, yes, things have been difficult the past few months since that bloody article went viral," Hayley said, throwing me a warning glare. I didn't dare look at Jake. "But this is why this trip has to happen. It's an opportunity to repair the damage from it and build Jake's reputation back up to where it was before, and secure a new book contract. You need to convince everyone you're still the king of romance, Jake. And Freya, you'll be there to logistically make sure it all runs smoothly, but also offer any advice along the way to get Jake's fans and publishers back on board. You both have got this." She sounded so confident, while my brain started to get foggy. "And you can use the company credit card for everything, first class all the way," she added, giving me a smile. "Okay, Freya?" I couldn't smile back. I shifted uncomfortably. I guess if you can't go, I said, but the enthusiasm had left my voice. Great. Start organising everything. Make sure you liaise with Jake, Hayley said. Call me if you need anything, Jake. I will. He got up as I walked to the door, and we left one after the other. As we walked away from Hayley's office, I felt my nerves increase and I turned towards my desk, Jake moving past me towards the exit. Freya. I paused in surprise at him addressing me directly and looked back at him. He looked down at me, our height difference almost as large as the 10-year age gap between us. You'll email me the details for the trip then? I was still a bit stunned about having to go on this trip. Yes? Jake prodded when I stayed silent. He sighed in frustration, clearly indicating that I irritated him. Yes, I said, nodding. I will organise it all, don't worry. I added as confidently as I could manage. He replied. Well, at least the weather in New York looks good at the moment. It's supposed to be dry all week. Excuse me? I squeaked, panicking he had deliberately chosen that word after overhearing me talking to Liv. So we need to pack for good weather, obviously, he said, shaking his head. I blushed that my mind had gone to my dry spell. He turned away before I could respond and carried on walking back towards the lifts. A minute later, when Hayley came out of her office, I still hadn't moved from the spot where he left me. This has to go well, Freya. Jake's career is hanging in the balance. I hope you know how important this conference is to us all. I finally woke up from my shocked trance to frown at her. But does he even want a new contract? I asked. That journalist heard him say that he hates writing romance books. I couldn't even fathom why someone would hate writing them, especially someone who could write one as well as he could. But there we were. Hayley shrugged. His books make us a lot of money, so you need to do all you can to make sure we can keep that going, okay? Okay, I found myself saying, because she was impossible to argue with. And what could I say anyway? No, I can't go because Jake Richards knows how long it's been since I last had sex, and how I think I'll never find anything close to the romance in the books he writes. Hayley eyed me. You want to be an agent yourself, so why don't you view this trip as your audition, if you like? What do you mean? Prove to me you can handle more responsibility, make a success of this trip with Jake, and we can talk when you get back about how we can move you from my assistant to being an agent, Hayley said. My heart leapt at the possibility of a promotion. I wasn't at all thrilled at having to work so closely on my own with Jake. I found it hard to communicate with him, and I didn't understand why he had even said those things about romance books. But Hayley was offering me a chance to step up. A chance I was desperate for. Really? Show me how much you want it, Freya. You know I do. I will work really hard out there, I said, determination to impress my boss setting in. Hayley beamed at me. Right answer. And Jake is a pussycat. You tell him what to do and he will do it. He wants to fix this. He's fully on board. So get everything booked and next week you'll be on your way to New York. Kind of exciting, right? She left me, sweeping back into her office, and I watched her go, wishing I could feel the excitement she was talking about. Hayley thought that Jake was a pussycat. If you could mistake a tiger for a pussycat. I had no idea how I was going to even talk to Jake, let alone tell him what to do, even though I had a big reason to try to do it now. My dream trip felt like it had the potential to be more of a nightmare instead. Chapter 3. I was relieved that I'd already organised after-work drinks with Liv, so I headed straight from the office to one of our favourite bars, and after we'd grabbed a bottle of wine to share, we found a table by the window, and I filled her in on Hayley's New York bombshell. As well as the fact Jake had been behind me when I had talked to her about my love life earlier. Liv took a long gulp of wine before responding. Well, we don't for sure know that Jake overheard you. He made a comment about the weather being dry in New York. But it is, she pointed out. I sighed. I guess. He said we needed to pack for warm weather. Maybe I read into that comment too much, but still, what if he did overhear us? But even if he did overhear, he's not going to tell Hayley. Your love life isn't any of their business. It has nothing to do with how well you do your job, which is pretty damn well, she added confidently, tossing back her dark shoulder-length hair. "I hope you're right," I said uneasily. "And besides, he has more important things to worry about than what you say in the office. He has to try to save his career, right?" "That's a good point," I agreed, feeling a tiny bit better. But then I sighed. I just wish it wasn't me that has to help him do it, you know? There is one bit of good news, though. I'll be in New York too, remember? I looked across at her, my heart lifting. "Oh, I forgot. Yes, you'll be at the conference too." Liv's publisher had organised for her to be on a panel and meet readers there. It was a huge relief that there would be a friendly face around. "That helps, but seriously," I leaned forward and eyed my cousin. "How can I be with Jake Richards for 5 whole days on my own? He intimidates the hell out of me. I mean, why does he intimidate me so much?" "Because you love his books, and he's easy on the eyes. Also, he has that whole moody creative guy thing going on." "Don't tell Aidan I said that," she said. "Plus he's 10 years older than me and is so blooming confident," I grumbled. I didn't feel anywhere near enough like a fully fledged adult yet. "I don't know," Liv said. "Maybe he's not as confident now as he used to be. These past few months can't have been easy. He might lose everything he spent 10 years building after what he was caught saying." "Maybe. I still wonder why he said those things, just to look good in front of those crime authors." "Maybe you'll find out on this trip." I took a sip of wine. And then there's the question of why should I help save the career of a man who is completely ungrateful about it? If he hates romance, then readers should bloody hate him. I'm as passionate about romance as you, but I think Hayley is right. You need to think about yourself and your career. If she's seeing this trip as a chance for you to prove to her you can be an agent yourself one day, then you should go ahead and prove it to her, Liv replied. Worry hit me instantly. Could I prove it to her? What if I can't, though? Jake Richards not only broke my heart when he slagged off romance books, but half the romance community is boycotting his books now. Well, that should make you feel far less intimidated by him, Liv said firmly. What do you mean? It's a last chance saloon for his writing career, so he should be on his knees begging you to help him. He should be intimidated by you. You are there to help him. You have the control here. He doesn't. Wow. Maybe I should see it like that, I mused. But I bet he can't believe Hayley has asked me to go with him. I'm 10 years younger, inexperienced at this job, a nobody. Then you'll just have to show him you are a somebody, which you are, like me, she winked. So humble, I told her, but I smiled. Liv's cheerleading of me was helping to raise my confidence ever so slightly. You're right, though. This is for my career, so I need to focus on that and how I can somehow turn the tide from everyone being against Jake Richards to being for him again. Not about what he thinks of me. We do not care what he thinks of you, Liv agreed, raising her wine glass. I clinked mine against hers in agreement. And to think we'll be going to New York finally, after all the times we've watched Serendipity. I smiled. It was one of our favourite Christmas films and was set in New York. We were a family who watched the same festive movies every year. And I'm staying in the hotel from it. Oh my God, I need to book me and Jake in there too, I said, my eyes lighting up. Liv clapped her hands. Yes, it'll be so much fun. I've always wanted to see the city. I can't let being there with Jake take all the excitement away from me. You can make this trip what you want, Freya. You always find the light in whatever you do. Oh, Liv, that's so sweet. I was happy to be finally seeing the city I'd always wanted to visit, plus the opportunity it could present for my career. I just wished it wasn't something I had to do with Jake Richards. Someone it felt like would just ignore all light instead of trying to find it. After we'd finished the wine, I headed home to Clapham. I shared a tiny, messy flat with 3 people I'd found online and whom I rarely saw or interacted with. It was all I could afford right now, and it made me want to stay out as much as possible, or hide in my room. So I headed straight there once I got in. I changed into my PJs and curled up on my bed, pulling my laptop open in front of me. Then I Googled the article that had put Jake's career into crisis mode. Readers are stupid for believing in happy ever afters, but I'm happy to take their money anyway. His words still were a gut punch to my romantic heart. There were thousands of angry comments on the page from fans of his books, shocked that he didn't believe in the romance he wrote about. I searched the other articles about it and looked at the various headlines. Has Jake Richards destroyed his best-selling writing career? Why write romance if you look down on it? Romance books are so unrealistic, even authors writing them don't believe in them anymore. I sighed when I saw that headline. Romance books were often treated like second-class citizens when it came to books being talked about in the press. Jake saying what he had about them had stoked that fire even more. Then I went on to Jake's Instagram account and found the apology post that Hayley had helped him to draft after the article caused such a furore. I was misquoted in that article and have contacted my lawyers about it. I'm sorry if any reader of my books has been hurt by the comments in it. I will always love being part of the romance book community. Scoffing out loud, I put my phone down and laid back against my pillows. I knew that statement was bullshit. Jake had admitted to Hayley that what the journalist had overheard had been correct. Then I went on to Jake's Instagram account and found the apology post that Hayley had helped him to draft after the article caused such a furore. Had still unfollowed his social media accounts in droves, and his publisher was so far refusing to commit to a new contract. Somehow Hayley had got him into this romance conference, and this trip was clearly make or break. As I rolled over and got ready for sleep, I wondered what the real truth was. Why had Jake said those things? If he believed them, why did he even want to carry on writing romance books? Just for more money? There was a bitter taste in my mouth about having to help him pull the wool over romance readers' eyes, readers who somehow all felt like friends to me, and all to help my own career. Kind of felt like I was being just like Jake and Hayley, but it also seemed like I had no choice. I had agreed to go to New York with Jake Richards, talk about something I would have never believed while I was at university reading his books and dreaming of finding the kind of love he wrote about. The way he had poured scorn on all of that had really hurt. But if he and my boss could be selfish and only care about making more money out of romance readers, I needed to push that hurt away. I needed to be as cold about my own career. Even if I had never been cold about anything or anyone in my life before. My mum had once told me she was worried that the world might chew me up and spit me out. And as I'd grown up, I tried to become tougher. Moving to London and getting this job had helped me stand firmer on my own 2 feet. So I just needed to push my feelings aside and not think about the fact that the person who had been my instruction manual for romance didn't believe in any of it. Otherwise, I was never going to get through this trip in one piece. And if Hayley was using this trip to assess my future at the company and my ability to be an agent myself, I had to not wear my heart on my sleeve, but be like Hayley and Jake, and treat it all as business. But when my eyes fell on my shelf of romance books, I knew that wasn't going to be at all easy to do. Chapter 4. The following week was spent frantically preparing for New York. With butterflies swirling in my stomach, I booked first-class plane tickets. I hadn't even travelled first class on a train before. When it came to a hotel, I copied Liv and booked us into the Waldorf Astoria, which had been used as a filming location in Serendipity. Why not tick off one of my life goals? I was trying to hold on to as much positivity about the trip as possible, and staying there would surely make any difficult moments with Jake worth it. I booked 2 deluxe rooms next to one another, with a view of the city, and then arranged for a car to collect us from the airport. I then took myself to the shops and spent some of my pretty meagre salary on 2 new dresses. New York would be warm, and after a few rubbish summers in London, I was missing a plentiful summer wardrobe. I made sure I didn't spend much, though, by getting them in Primark, along with a new pair of boots, a straw hat in case I left the conference centre, and a pair of heart-framed sunglasses. Then my last day at work before we headed for New York arrived, and Hayley called me into her office first thing, so we could strategise for my 5 days in the city. "Your main goal on this trip," Hayley said as she paced around her office while I sat with a notebook on my lap to jot down her instructions, is to remind everyone that Jake Richards is the king of romance books, to make them forget that article ever came out, that readers love his books and are desperate for more. Our success metric is, of course, getting him a new book deal with his publishers, she said, barking at me like she was an army sergeant. I nodded along as that seemed to be all she required. Jake will be on 2 panels at the conference, plus he's doing a book reading and signing, and an interview with a romance book podcast, Hayley continued. I'm most concerned about the signing and reader session, as it's allotted just to him. You're not sure if readers will turn up? Hayley sighed. Exactly. Will they boycott it, or will they show up so they can accuse him about what he said? Or will his diehard fans still support him? It could go a number of ways, so you'll need to really be ready for anything. I wrote down in the notebook, be ready for anything, and tried not to panic about failing spectacularly, with Jake Richards sinking without a trace along with my career dreams. As you know, Liv is also there and her publisher will be looking after her, but make sure to check in with her just in case. Hayley looked at me. Any questions? I bit back the urge to tell her I had nothing but questions. I have one. I wondered whether she would tell me the truth. I knew that logically it shouldn't matter. This was my job and I needed to do it. But the word why just kept on floating into my mind. If Jake truly hates romance and pities the people who love them, then why has he agreed to this trip? Can't just be about money. I mean, he must be a millionaire. Hayley barked out a laugh. Not quite. I don't make that much commission out of him, but yes, he's had a lucrative career, and it's one that I want to keep on managing. All I know is he's asked me to get him another book deal, and that's what I'm going to do. Anything else? You'll have to ask him. I stared at her, knowing that would be impossible. There was no way we could have that kind of tête-à-tête on this trip. As Hayley went on again about saving his reputation, I zoned out a little bit and drew a heart in the margin of my notebook. I wondered if what Jake cared more about than money was his reputation. He had gone from being the #1 romance author in the UK, maybe even the world, and that kind of fall from grace must have been hard to take. He'd always seemed super confident to me, a man with a large ego, so maybe he wanted to get his power and status back. The only thing Jake has refused to do at the conference, Hayley said, drawing me back from my thoughts, is to have his own stand on the final day. He said he didn't want to be in the room with everyone in the industry and all the conference attendees because he might be murdered. I snorted. He has a point, to be fair. Hayley gave me a warning look again. Perhaps, but I told him the welcome drinks on the evening you arrive are non-negotiable. Everyone at the conference will be there, so I suggest you both go, take a tour of the room, make sure he's seen and is polite to anyone who matters, then get him the hell out of there before there is a hint of murder. She said this so matter-of-factly, I had no idea if she was joking or not. I didn't want to find out, though, so I underlined the note I had jotted down about leaving the welcome drinks ASAP. The meeting with Hayley lasted most of the morning, but thankfully she then told me to go home so I could pack and get a good night's sleep ahead of my flight to New York in the morning. When I got back to the flat, I opened up my suitcase on my bed and started to put my clothes into it. Nerves swirled around with excitement about the trip ahead. I grabbed toiletries from the bathroom and stared at what I had packed so far, hoping I wasn't forgetting anything important like my passport or something equally embarrassing. I needed to get off on the right foot with Jake Richards. So instead of letting him see how ruffled I was, I needed to act calm, cool and collected. I thought that maybe a mantra could help, so I repeated those words over and over in my mind as I packed, and hoped they would become true. Spoiler alert, the mantra failed. Calm, cool and collected, my arse. First, the car I had ordered was half an hour late to pick me up. I made frantic phone calls and checked my emails with them, and finally, the car company admitted my driver had set off late and was now stuck in traffic. Jake consequently arrived at the airport before me and sailed through check-in, sending me a curt message saying he'd meet me in the first-class lounge. So we didn't get off to the best start there. When I finally got to Heathrow, there was a long check-in queue, and then, of course, they wanted to look through my suitcase because I clearly looked so nervous and frantic, they thought I might be planning to do something dodgy. When I finally got all checked in, I hurried to the lounge with my carry-on bag, red-faced, heart racing with a bead of sweat dripping down my back. As I walked through the lounge entrance, I missed the yellow caution wet floor sign and hurried across the shiny floor in my 3-inch boots and slipped instantly. I let out a strangled yell akin to a cat if you stood on their tail, then promptly fell down. My bag collapsed open beside me, its contents flying everywhere. I lay on my back in a heap on the floor, wondering if I had died and gone to hell, when someone cleared their throat. I looked up in confusion into a pair of hazel-coloured eyes. "Am I alive?" I asked, clutching my chest with my hand. "You're talking, so I would say yes," the man replied dryly. "How about I help you up to make sure?" "Oh, okay, yes, good idea," I said, nodding. My whole body hurt along with the stabbing pain of intense humiliation. I was certain my face was the same shade as a lobster. A hand stretched out for mine and I grabbed it, clammy and sweaty, and let the man pull me up from the floor with easy strength. Once I was back on my feet, I swayed for a moment, but the hand holding mine steadied me. I shook my head to clear my confusion, and then the man in front of me became clear. I dropped his hand instantly. "Oh, it's you," I said stupidly, as I realised it had been Jake Richards who had not only witnessed my epic fall, but who had had to help me get back up. Awesome start to our trip. "It's me," he confirmed. I was unable to read his expression, but he must have been pissed off. "Shall we pick up your things?" He was wearing a suit, which felt kind of crazy for a long-haul flight, and his hair was as immaculate as ever along with his perfectly styled stubble. I must have looked completely chaotic to him in my knee-length polka-dot dress and cowboy boots, my auburn hair wild after leaving it to dry naturally. I felt it too. "Oh." I looked around at my belongings strewn across the floor and could only hope the pencil topped with a rubber penis that I had kept from a friend's hen do last year was not in Jake's eyeline. "Here." He held out my notebook with Hayley's instructions in, and the aforementioned pen. "Your favourite?" he asked. His mouth pursed as he handed them over. "No, oh my God!" I yelped and snatched the items from him, then grabbed my bag, hastily stuffing them in. Jake edged backwards from me, and I couldn't blame him, wanting to make a swift escape if he could. Grumpily, I bent down and hurriedly collected my other things before he could see anything else embarrassing. Once the floor was clear, I turned around. "I think I'll just go to the ladies," I said, trying to sound dignified when I had proved I was anything but. "I'll be over there with a coffee," Jake said, striding away with his usual confidence. I watched him go with dismay. My plan to start off with him having everything in hand had failed completely. Why am I incapable of not embarrassing myself in front of this man? I muttered aloud as I shuffled off to the bathroom to try to compose myself. I had no idea how I'd ever turn around his opinion of me now. But I supposed when you hit rock bottom, the only way is up. So maybe by the end of this trip, I could convince him that I was an actual functioning adult. I walked into the loos and looked at my reflection. My hair standing in all directions, my face still red, my makeup sliding off it, my dress strap hanging down on one side and the penis-shaped pencil sticking out of my bag, and decided that I had my work very much cut out for me. Chapter 5. When I returned from the bathroom mildly fresher looking after fixing my hair and makeup and blotting the sweat off my body, Jake was at a table in the corner. He looked the epitome of calm, sipping black coffee and reading a newspaper. I took a deep breath and walked over to the refreshment area and grabbed myself a coffee and a sandwich, and then reluctantly went to join him. "That could have been a meet cute," I blurted out as I slid into the chair opposite him. His eyes left the newspaper and slid to me. "I'm sorry?" "Like in one of your books," I said, inwardly telling myself to stop talking, but I was somehow unable to. "You know, a woman falls to the floor in front of you, then you help her up, and then the two of you fall in." I stumbled under his piercing gaze. I let out a nervous laugh when he said nothing, further mortification rolling over me. I waved my hand. "Never mind. Let's just hope the rest of this trip is uneventful," I said, hoping he couldn't see how red my face was again. I grabbed the coffee cup and took a long gulp, even though it was too hot to enjoy doing so. "Quite," he replied coolly, going back to his newspaper like I was an irritating fly. I leaned back in the chair and pulled out my phone, cringing at myself. So much for being less intimidated by Jake. Now I was back in front of him, I was worse than ever. It was like the more embarrassing I was, the more composed he became. It was bloody annoying. I kind of longed to see what would happen if that coolness cracked for a minute. I wondered if I would ever be able to witness it. I sent Liv a panicked message, knowing her flight was a couple of hours later than ours. "Yet again, I've made a fool of myself in front of Jake. How do I salvage the situation?" Liv replied instantly. "Focus on the fact you were there to help save his career. He needs you. You have the upper hand. Enjoy first class, future literary agent." I read her message twice, then put my phone away and cleared my throat. She was right. The key was focusing on the reason why we were here together and heading to New York, and not how much I had made a fool of myself in front of this man. I tried to adjust my face into an expression that would show how capable I was. Fake it until you make it and all that. "So, should we discuss our strategy for this week?" I asked, straightening in a vain attempt to look as tall as him. Jake sighed but put the newspaper down. "Hayley sent me a long email yesterday all about it." I nodded. "She copied me in. Our main goal is to get as much good publicity for you as possible. So you need to be the perfect author for the next 5 days. Engaged, open, chatty and polite, and above all, enthusiastic about not only your books, but the other authors at the conference. And love stories in general. Also, do not mention that article. If anyone asks about it, Hayley advised, to say I legally cannot discuss it." Jake cut in. He looked at me. "She told me you disapproved of our statement when the article came out." "She did?" I replied, startled. I tried not to let her see how upset I had been about it all, but clearly she'd realised anyway. Jake was giving me a scrutinising gaze across the table, and my nerves dialed up again. My mind went fuzzy as I looked back into his eyes. I'd never met a man who could make you feel like he was looking into your soul like that before. It made me feel like I couldn't lie to him. I blinked, but he was still watching me and the truth came tumbling out. "Well," I shifted uncomfortably in my chair. "I supposed I would have handled it differently. I don't believe in lying like that, and I think readers probably found your statement impersonal." "So how would you have handled it then?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. I couldn't tell if he was pissed off by what I had said or not. I knew that he was our client and I should be professional, but I also wanted to be honest like I always was. I had no idea if Jake would respect me more if I was, or even less than he did already. I think I would have accepted what I had said had been honest and admitted in the statement that I had said it. I would have asked my readers for their forgiveness if that was what I wanted. I would maybe have explained why I had said those things in the first place. Curiosity sat deeply in me about why someone who had a career in writing romance had suddenly slagged it off like he had done. Was he really so materialistic that he had written all his lovely books just for the money? Did he really not believe in love and romance at all? After meeting Jake Richards, I'd found it hard to believe he had written things that had made my heart swell, my knees weak and my cheeks blush. That he believed in happy ever afters. But I assumed that was because I was nothing to him, a lowly assistant he only saw in a business setting. That underneath the stone-cold exterior, he did have a romantic heart like mine. Then he made those comments and I thought maybe the exterior he showed was actually the real man after all. And that made me feel betrayed like his other readers. I wondered if he realised how personally we had all taken his comments. Jake sat silently for a moment, and I wasn't sure he was going to answer me. Then he opened his mouth to speak. He was cut off, though, as an announcement came on over the speaker, and we heard that our flight was now open for boarding. "Shall we?" Jake said, getting up and gathering his things in one smooth motion. He started for the door, and I was left scrambling to hurry after him, grabbing my croissant to eat on the way, feeling like he had been saved by the bell. I followed Jake to the boarding queue, and when our passes were checked, we walked onto the plane and headed for the front. I tried not to let my eyes widen too much when I saw first class for the first time in my life, but it was really hard not to. Excitement replaced the earlier stress of the day. I couldn't believe I was travelling this way. I took in the separate pods and the amount of space, the leg room I'd have, the fancy TV screens and the freebies they had left out for everyone. My eyes fell on a pair of silky pyjamas folded ready for me in my pod. "Oh my God, this is amazing," I said breathily in wonder. "Your first time?" I jumped and turned to see Jake beside me, watching intently. He hovered by the pod opposite mine. I had forgotten for a moment we would be side by side for the flight. I flushed as I nodded. "Yes," I said, thinking he must have flown first class hundreds of times. But it wasn't like many people could afford it, so I knew I shouldn't let his scrutiny embarrass me. This wasn't something to be nonchalant about. I had dreamed of being able to travel in style like this. "And I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it," I told both Jake and myself with a shrug. Then I pulled out my phone to take a photo of my pod, ignoring the fact he was still watching me. Afterwards, I sat down with a contented sigh. "Oh, yes," I said, leaning back in the seat, which was approximately 10 times more comfortable than economy ones. Drink to settle in?" I jumped as a flight attendant peered around the pod at me, smiling widely. "Oh, how about champagne?" "This is a work trip, though," I confessed, biting my lip. "What would your boss do?" he asked me. "She'd order champagne." A voice sailed over from across the aisle. I jumped again and looked over at Jake, who had sat down in his pod opposite, but was still watching me with interest. I raised an eyebrow at his encouragement, which was surprising, but I also knew he was right. Hayley Harper was the champagne queen, so I nodded at the flight attendant. "Yes, please. A glass of fizz would be lovely." "You too, sir?" he asked Jake, who thought about it for a moment. "Why not? We need to mark Freya's first time here." "I'm a first-class virgin," I agreed as the flight attendant left to get our drinks. I caught a small smile on Jake's lips while my hand flew to my mouth that I'd made another sex comment in front of him. "Why do I keep embarrassing myself in front of you?" I groaned. Then my cheeks began to turn pink again. I wouldn't need to use blusher at all when I was around Jake at this rate. Jake looked at me for a moment. Then he ran a hand through his dark hair. My eyes tracked the motion involuntarily. "I don't know, Freya, but if it makes you feel better, I embarrass myself in front of thousands of people. I need this trip to work out because of it, so don't worry about embarrassing yourself in front of me. You don't care what I think about you, do you?" I stared at him. There he was, finally admitting to the fact that the article calling him out for slagging off romance books had been humiliating and damaging, and telling me that it didn't matter I had embarrassed myself in front of him. His last words echoed through my brain as the flight attendant returned with our glasses. Did I care what he thought about me? I wanted to say no. He had gone down in my estimation after finding out he might not care about the books he'd written that had made me so happy to read, and he was so much more reserved than I was, but I wanted to impress him still. It was annoying, but I couldn't help it. I liked that he had acknowledged he needed this trip to work out, that he needed my help. Finally, we were on a more level footing. If I ignored him being 10 years older, a rich and famous author, and handsome as hell...